What did you guys talk about in the White House?
We talked about job creation and about workforce development. And frankly, what every single governor, there were Democrat, Republican governors alike in that room, and we were in absolute unanimous agreement that the number one economic issue that we wrestle with is workforce development. How do you ensure that you have a qualified 21st century workforce? And the president's call to action on this through apprenticeships and through non-traditional paths of earning money while you're learning is music to our ears.
So what exactly is he going to do in order to spur these public-private partnerships for apprenticeship programs?
He's going to give more control to the states. And again, regardless of our ideology, every state wants to be able to have control. There's more ability to use the money effectively at the local level than there is to try to do it from a distance in Washington. So more flexibility, aligning some of the programs between Department of Education and of Labor and of the Small Business Association, so you get rid of some of the redundancy and regulation. I think starting to allow us to align up other things, various benefits and things, all these things are related to how we get the millions of people not working who could and would and should be working into the workforce.
So what role does Congress have to play in all this?
I think some of it is going to be budget, of course, and depends on whether or not the monies are allocated, because right now we spend scores of billions of dollars on workforce development, probably north of $100 billion. I know $1.2 billion goes through Kentucky alone, largely federal, for workforce development. But there's so many rules, it's so complicated that I think at the end of the day, we've got to streamline the process. That's what the president recognizes. That's what he's shooting for.
Well, it's really a no-brainer to boost apprenticeship programs. It is bipartisan, but whether or not it gets tied up in the budget fight, hopefully, I mean, this is a nonpartisan issue. But I want to switch gears for a second. Obamacare, the president reportedly called the House version of the bill, quote-unquote, mean. You, of course, have been really in the trenches in terms of the governor, working with the White House, in terms of crafting a new plan for health care. Where does that stand?
There is no one-size-fits-all. I think we have figured that out. No matter what comes out of Congress through the reconciliation process, will still not fit all. And I think the answer is, again, to make it as local as possible. And so what I've been an advocate for from the beginning in my conversations with the president and everyone in his administration is that give control to the states in the form of a block grant, a per capita grant, whatever the methodology. And this, again, requires Congress to allocate those dollars. But if they go to the states will be those laboratories of democracy. The states will come up with the ideas that actually allow us to provide more health care to more people in a more effective way at a cost-effective way.
But Gov, you know this. I mean, people are frustrated. They're looking at the slowness coming out of the Senate, and they want to know, when is this actually going to get done? Did you talk about a timeline in there about when actually health care is when there's going to be a plan to vote on or through the reconciliation?
We were talking about people in the apprenticeship program. We were specifically here talking about job creation and about engaging people and getting them back to work and reaching down into the younger ages. And it's interesting because one of the things that leads to a population that's less healthy than you would have them to be is people who've lost hope and the dignity associated with being an active part of the working community. And so these are people who, frankly, have given up and they're not engaged. If we get people when they're young, before they get into drugs or get into listlessness, then we can start to. So these things are actually remarkably interrelated. They really are.
The tax reform, health care, I mean, are you satisfied at the pace at which things are getting done with the Republican-controlled Congress? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, for crying out loud, how many months has it been? I don't even think it's been 6 months yet, has it? I mean, it's been somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months or so that they've been there. The level of expectation is so absurdly out of line with the way this town has always operated for generations. Their ability to fulfill promises and get things done and move with a sense of urgency is remarkable. Is it frustrating to see Congress drag their feet and not work as efficiently as we'd like them to? Of course. But name a time and a place that Congress ever has. Literally, ever.
Good point. Quickly, I know you're busy. I want to get your take on the shooting yesterday. Huge tragedy. What have you heard from your constituents about that?
It's heartbreaking. It's sobering. It wakes people up. It causes us to realize that evil truly lurks among us, and you cannot regulate that away. You cannot pass laws that would preclude it. If a person is determined to perpetrate evil upon innocent people, there is really nothing that can be done about that. And so I think a lot of people were shocked and heartbroken. Our thoughts and prayers, not only with Representative Scalise, but all the others that were affected. And I think so many people reaffirms their gratitude for the men and women who put on a uniform and are willing to literally go into the face of fire to protect their fellow citizens.
You know that some of the conversation has shifted to whether or not the political rhetoric as a whole in this country was impacted at all. What do you make of that type of punditry, Twitter punditry rhetoric about whether or not that had an impact in yesterday's shooting?
I will say this. I would encourage you tonight, or any one of your viewers, to literally go and pick any Facebook post anywhere that's political, and then read the however many comments underneath it, and you will literally find at least a handful in any feed of people who are calling for themselves or someone else to do the very same things that we just saw happen.
It's sick.
It is sick.
And it's not unique to either political party.
No, it's not. Because it's a sad commentary on where we are as Americans now in terms of our loss of civil discourse, our disregard for human life and respect for one another. And it starts at the most basic level, including whether or not we treat people the way we want to be treated, the golden rule, whether or not we truly care to be our brother's keeper. And if we don't, we will see ultimately it bubble up in the minds of people who are perhaps unbalanced, perhaps not, where it will actually be put into action.
You guys are talking about apprenticeships, talking about health care, you're talking about tax reform, infrastructure, all of this stuff. Of course, the big story here in Washington was this Washington Post report about potentially the special counsel looking into an obstruction of justice allegations for the president. Every Republican I've spoken to on Capitol Hill says there's not enough evidence. Democrats disagree. What's your take?
Here's what I will tell you, and it's shocking perhaps to those in Washington. Most people outside of this town don't really care about what the Washington Post says about anything. What they report, what they hypothesize on, they truly don't. And I'm just speaking for 4.5 million people in our state. Very few people read the Washington Post. And so if a rumor starts here that gets everybody a buzz in this town, we don't care. It doesn't affect us. It doesn't put food on our table. I don't ever take part in rumor mongering. I know it's the coin of the realm in this town, but I think it serves no purpose, and it ultimately spins our attention away from the very things we were talking about a moment ago.
So how do you get attention back on that, I guess? Or are you disappointed at the lack of focus on that coming from the White House?
On which now?
On tweeting about apprenticeship programs or putting the focus back on healthcare tax reform.
A large part of it falls upon what you all, as folks in the media and your editors, decide is worthy of the above the fold, of worthy of what leads the news network on any given hour that you broadcast. The bottom line is you have a lot to do with it. But at the end of the day, more than I think folks in media understand, any media, social media, traditional media, whatever the case may be, more than folks realize, your average person on the street is more interested in their daily life, the safety and security of their children, and the money that is or is not in their wallet and their ability to make ends meet. That's what moves people. And frankly, at the end of the day, all this other static that matters so much in this town is a lot less relevant out there in real America.